Welcome to the Happy Being Well podcast, where we talk about strategies and insights so you can live happy being well with your host, Rita Ferrugia. This podcast is presented by happybeingwell.com, your online store providing the best in all natural wellness products, such as natural essential oils, all natural bath products, all natural facial masks, all natural deodorants, irresistible leggings, crystals, including crystal home decor and kitchen items, herbal teas, natural sleep aids, and so much more natural wellness goodies at happybeingwell.com. Free shipping on any order within the USA at happybeingwell.com. Now enjoy the show.
Hi guys, welcome to the Happy Being Well podcast. I'm your host, Rita Ferrugia, and we have a great guest as always. Today's really special because she's my great friend, Ashley Cummings. She is a yoga teacher. She has owned 2 yoga studios, and she also is a yoga trainer for yoga teachers. So she certifies people to become yoga teachers through her online training school. And in addition, she also teaches people how to do yoga, both in person and virtual. She's a private yoga instructor as well. So Ash, welcome to the Happy Being Well podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Rita. You know, I love you. I'm honored to be here. And thank you for having me.
I love you too. So I'm excited to discuss and dive deep into the connection between yoga and spiritual growth and how that really can catapult our spiritual awakening, our awareness more specifically as well, that can lead ultimately into our transformation. So that's what I really, really, really want to dive deep into today with you.
That's a really big question. What is your working definition of spirituality?
Well, everyone has a different view on what's spiritual to them, right? I mean, people could be cooking, could be a spiritual,
Absolutely. Folding
right?
clothes can be spiritual. And I believe everything that we do should have some kind of meaning. You were talking about intention a little bit earlier before we got on here. I kind of stay away from words like spiritual, love, light, just because they got very, in my opinion, teaching 18, almost 19 years now, as you mentioned, with opening and running 2 yoga schools. In my opinion, it got very washed out, right? So I'd like to, if we can substitute the word spiritual for evolution, personal evolution. I think that's where you were going, saying, I think you used the word transition as well. But was the direct question, how does yoga facilitate our personal evolution, i.e., elevate our spirituality?
Mm.
Is that what you're asking?
Like in my past experiences, like I've dabbled in yoga. I've never, had a very consistent practice, but in my experiences, I remember in a hot yoga session, the yoga
You
instructors
remember your first yoga class?
Oh gosh, no, it must have been like in university, um, long time ago. I think it was like, I maybe it had been in Montreal. Who knows? I don't know. Don't know. Because I know when I was working at the Canadian space, I was an intern at the Canadian Space Agency as an intern. They had like yoga sessions during lunch that we can go to. So I know I did yoga then as well, but I know I first was starting to yoga during my university days. And then again, it was just dabbling. But I do remember getting my ass whipped in a yoga studio by a yoga instructor. And, and then it's like getting into those poses and for a sustained period of time can be very challenging. And I just remember and then once they go into like child's pose, it feels so, you like relief, like it's like, oh, relief. And so in my mind at that time, I was like, wow, it just kind of like triggered like that whole like contrast of like, why we work so hard. Because when we work so hard, the real rest is like just feels so much more pleasurable, right? It's like so you feel so much more grateful. So that was the insight that I got from that specific moment in time, from that. And that's one. And I do remember, maybe you can speak on this more. There was one yoga instructor I had. I don't know if he was just messing with us or maybe he was trying to teach us a lesson. I don't know, but we were in warrior's pose and he had said to us, now smile. Now that was pretty hard to do because it was like you're in warrior's pose and you're trying to, and you were, you're trying to concentrate, you're looking at your finger to stay in that pose and smiling. And it was a very challenging thing to do. So I don't know if the lesson is like our physiology really does obviously influence our emotions. So,
You
which
said a lot
obviously,
of really important things there, and I think you've experienced what yoga does sort of on its own. So you said it was hard to smile, right? So one of the huge things that yoga does for us every single time we go to the mat is you experience externally difficult situations like holding warrior pose, and then on top of that, smiling while you're holding it, right? So this is, and I like to explain, especially like, hour and a half vinyasa classes, they're sort of like meant to be, at least I like them to be a sort of a journey that mimics life, except you're in a safe place. So yes, your legs are on fire, your stomach's on fire, you might be sweating, you might be trying to regulate your breath. But I love that that teacher told you to smile, because what you're teaching your subconscious brain to do is to be comfortable internally when external situations are not necessarily comfortable. And guess what? That's most of life. We can't control most of what happens, in the car, in the market. These are external things. But when you're on your yoga mat in a yoga studio, hopefully you're in a safe place to practice, knowing that you're okay. Because your brain will always move towards pleasure and away from pain, right? So when your thighs are on, even though what getting strong feels like can sometimes be uncomfortable. So slowly but surely, and it's usually not that slow, you're strengthening and building, literally rewiring your neural pathways in your brain to become stronger. And then when you're out in the world and somebody bumps you, God forbid, in the back of the car or in the market, your brain kicks in. Oh, I've done hard stuff. I've done tough stuff, and I've even smiled. I got this. Does that make sense?
yeah, that totally makes sense.
Another thing
Um,
to answer the first part of your question, I hope, was how does yoga help us evolve and become more in tune with ourselves? And I think that's my preference in the word spirituality. Just sometimes people say spiritual, and it just can mean almost anything, right? So for example, the warrior pose is being in, first of all, people move a lot. Our attention spans are getting smaller and smaller, right? So for 5 or 7 breaths, stay still in one place, except for breathing in deep and breathing out long. You're not eating, you're not talking, you're just with yourself, right? So then you start to realize what's happening in the stillness, because we're constantly moving around. I know you're a new mom, and there's always things that we need to be doing yesterday, right? But when you give yourself that time to be with yourself, you can feel what's really going on with you. Does that make sense?
yeah, totally.
With
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
better
yeah.
Rita is, the better everyone around Rita is.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah. If what I love about yoga is, for people that have difficulties meditating, is that yoga kind of helps us discipline that stillness in our minds through concentrating and getting into the pose and holding that pose for a sustained period of time. Because there's
So
no more.
there's two parts. So there's dynamic yoga, which is when you're flowing with your breath, and that's actually a moving meditation. You coordinate your deep inhale, arms up, your complete exhale, arms down. So that's dynamic, when there's movement. And then there's static, which is holding a pose, like where you were and your teacher told you to smile. So but the whole moving and breathing part before you get to shavasana, which is the end resting pose, which is should be sort of a meditative state, that's exactly what it's designed to do. Yoga is a system designed to liberate you from your thinking mind. So a lot of people overthink meditation. It's like, I can't do it. Meditation is very simple. The entrance into meditation is focus and concentration on one thing and one thing only. Sustained focus, concentration on one thing and one thing only. Then the grocery list comes up, or something you have to do for later or whatever, and you redirect. And that's the building the mental discipline. Redirect back to back to what you chose to focus and concentrate upon. Maybe it's your third eye. Maybe it's your drishti, which is your point of focus in warrior pose, which is your middle finger. But you're just breathing in deep, breathing out long, keeping your mind as empty as possible, and focusing on that breath and coordinating the breath with the movement, wherein it becomes the moving meditation.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome. That's a good
meditation
point.
is way easier to do after like 30 minutes of yoga. You know, your body just calms down a bit, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I know after like remembering all my past yoga sessions, like always after a yoga session, I always
Yoga,
felt so happy. Like either I've done yoga, in the cold in the winter, going to the hot yoga studios and afterwards feeling amazing, or doing yoga on the ocean and feeling amazing. Always feeling super, super happy after a yoga session. With those, you just I don't know, just yoga, just I've always felt amazing afterwards. Um, I feel like it sometimes can be more of like a more of a serotonin release, probably because it's not only a physical exercise, it's also is a spiritual exercise as well. And actually, some of the poses, I'm not an expert, you are, 'cause I know some yoga instructors do add in, oh, this pose helps with digestion, and this pose helps with. So there are some actual
pretty
like,
much every pose is designed to target a different part of the body, and the place that you're feeling it, I like to say, is the place that we're taking care of at that time in that time. So, for example, in a forward fold, assuming that the hamstrings and the low back are the hamstrings are open and the low back is safe, you're going to feel a space in the back of the legs, and you're going to breathe there. When you're in a warrior pose, you're going to feel muscles building into the front thigh muscle. Um, you're going to breathe there, right? So then there you get into the twists where you're literally massaging internal organs, facilitating digestion, elimination, detoxification of the bodily organs. So yeah, and then there's some fun one that there are more of the poses have very specific targets in the body than not. It's kind of funny to me, like crow pose has, besides making your arms a little strong, it's just like the first pose I find everyone teach in arm balancing. Do you know what crow pose is? It's when you put your hands down and then you lean onto your knees. I can kind of show you. I don't know why teachers have chosen it, but it's like you're starting sort of a squat position. You put your hands down and you lean forward and you lift your feet off the
oh,
ground. So this one to me is the least beneficial arm balancing pose. So I don't know why it's like the it seems to be the beginning. There are so many more, because arm balancing really should be called belly balancing. It's really great to strengthen the core. It's really not a lot of the arm strength. But yeah, I
so
mean, I don't know if people know there's lymph nodes in the inside of the upper thigh. Like there's a pose called half moon where you're breathing into the inside of there. But the twisting is also super important. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What did you say?
going to say also, like doing yoga, a lot of people have said it helps increase their intuition,
So that goes back to taking time to be with yourself, right? Usually when we're driving, maybe we're thinking and we're with ourselves, driving alone, for example, or even meditation. But um, when you're there in your body, working with your body, your intuition, you start to feel different things. You can feel, so the flexibility in the mind comes with the flexibility in the body, and I think vice versa, right? You start to just be more aware of not only just people around you. It doesn't matter if you're in classes, public classes or private classes, but you're more aware of your body, and with that awareness comes pretty much awareness about everything. I'll never forget, it's about 7 years ago. I was like in LA for maybe 2 or 3 years, and the way I touched the button on an elevator. I was in the elevator with a man at Sunset Plaza, and I just touched the button. You just start to move differently through the world, really. And a guy said, "Are you a yoga teacher?" I was like, "Why would you ask that?" I wasn't in my like yoga costume, I call it, or my gear. And he's like, "Just the way you touch the button, you start doing things more on purpose." And the breath is very important. So there's something called the autonomic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system and the I was writing about this yesterday, and then the other one. And the bottom line is, so the autonomic nervous system regulates the body, including the breath. We can also take it over. Another thing that's very interesting is, so when you get scared, usually your breath stops. Like if you get an email and it says, God forbid, identity, your breath will stop, right? And then responses will follow physiologically. But when you start to get into your breath and learn how to breathe in deep and breathe out long and sustain yourself in that present moment awareness, just consciously inhaling and exhaling is a meditation in itself. Then you start to be able to go backwards and you can trick your brain, you can stay calm. So this alert comes up on your computer or whatever it is, and instead of you take a deep breath, what's all this about? You know what I'm saying? So the way you approach pretty much everything starts to shift in a more aware way. And I think that the more awareness we have, the more cognizance we have moving through life, the smoother and easier and more clearly we can see everything. So
Mm-hmm.
than instinct. And then also just being in touch with your body and your breath. And there's so much of the belly involved. You know, the gut instinct isn't a coincidence. Vagus nerve, gut feeling, it's the one nerve that goes from your brain to your belly, and it sends 80 to 90 information, 80% to 90% overwhelming amount of the information. It's reporting about our body to the brain. The heartbeat is this, the breath is this, the this is that. It's only about 10 or 20% of the brain sending messages down. So it's a beautiful thing that we have our body, but the more people just don't pay attention to what they're feeling and ignore their feelings, I think that's when it gets tricky and people sort of lose course, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. So like, yeah, most people do ignore their feelings, or they doubt them it's just a byproduct of
Or they
living
do
in
what's
society.
easier or more advantageous or what brings them more money in that moment or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I think the more and more you go over those kinds of lines, the less those lines start showing up for you. You mentioned food too, I think, right? That was one of the questions.
Yeah, well, some people consider cooking as spiritual. I mean, realistically, I think everything, how we live life is a spiritual practice in itself. It's just the more present, the more aware you are, and the more intentional you are with your decisions, your choices, your behavior, um, is a spiritual practice in itself, really. As I mean,
100%.
everything is energy. So what we're really sowing every day, we reap what we sow. So, you know, that's my belief. I think everything really truly is spiritual. Everything, if we really were to put the premise on everything is energy, even when we're cooking, and how you feel that day, we're energy seeping through our fingers, our eyes, everything, we're emitting energy. And that's going into the food that we're cooking, and then we're going to eat that food.
100%. I thought you asked something about do people change their diets? I thought in the pre-notes there was something about that. It might have been for something else. But I was going to say people start to make I've seen this and it happened to me. You start making more cognizant choices about what you put into your body. Because also so drama, trauma, we store stuff in our connective tissues. So especially women in the hips. So when you get to a pigeon pose, which is a deep hip opening pose, and for example, the first time I did it for longer than 10 or 15 breaths, I started crying hysterically. Stuff was just being released, right? From my body. And emotions come up a lot, especially for women in deep hip openers. But you release all that, and now you're working with this new, fresh, flexible body, and it makes a lot of choices easier. You want to keep feeling that way. They say it takes 28 days to create a habit, good or bad, or break a habit for that matter. So when people eat McDonald's and don't work out or not even deep, most people don't even know how to breathe properly, right? 70% of toxins leave our body through the process of exhale. When was the last time you made sure all the air was out before you took your next inhale? I mean, I don't even do it most of the time, right? So just kind of giving yourself the gift of being more comfortable in your body as you're moving through life, and not, but and also the other, looking great, but the all the many benefits that you're naming about all the internal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Um, so what I interesting to me too is like many people have dabbled in yoga like myself. But I've never decided to like take it seriously and like, have a, I've never committed to it and have a regular practice and decide, hey, I want to be a yoga teacher. So what made you commit to it and just sustain and just live a yoga life,
Well,
basically?
that's a great question, because I was basically like you. I found yoga. I was really into, I coached gymnastics before I found yoga. It was actually fellow coaches that took me to my first yoga class. I did ballet. I minored in university in dance. I did ballet and modern dance since I was 2. Um, when I found yoga, like for the first class I took, I was very lucky to have an amazing teacher. I was shaking, I was sweating, I probably cried, I could barely breathe, but I was hooked. I was like, whatever this is, I want more. And I kept going and I kept going, and I was going for like 2 years, but I was just like, I'm going, I mostly sometimes is in the back of the class, depending on the teacher. And after a class one day, a woman named Veronica who was teaching, and I liked her class in Miami Beach, and she said, Ashley, I think you should be a yoga teacher. But yeah, I had thanked her after classes maybe 3 times. And like, I was like, what do you mean? She was like, my friend Fred Bush is starting a yoga teacher training, and I think you would be an amazing yoga teacher. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is very true. There's like literally Ashley pre-yoga teacher training and Ashley post-yoga teacher training. I went ahead and rolled the dice. I called Fred Bush and I got into the teacher training. And 10 weeks later, I was a certified yoga teacher. And then I taught a bunch of probably awful classes for at least 2 or 3 years and learned my way. But it was really special. And it's something no one can ever take away from you. And it's something you can do anywhere. Like I've made money all over the world just having a yoga mat.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's right. Yeah, you teach people how to be yoga instructors. You certify them. So if anyone listening wants to be a yoga teacher, contact Ashley. I will give you her email to contact her, and she runs an
I'm doing
online.
my next online yoga teacher training. I usually like to have at least 8 or 10 people. So depending on how many people we have signed up, we have 2 right now. Middle of May, early June.
And I know you were doing. And for anyone who lives in the LA area, I know I'm not sure if you're still doing it, but I know you've been posting like those outside classes in the park. You were doing yoga in the park.
I want to tell anybody that is a yoga teacher or plans to be starting a yoga class in the park in the winter. So I'm gonna restart it now that it's getting warmer, but I started it last year. It was fun, but half the time the ground was very cold. We would warm up quickly, but park yoga is wonderful. I love teaching park yoga. I'm not sure about it. I've had 2 yoga schools, one in Miami Beach and one here in West Hollywood. I'm just not sure with the financial climate of everything in general, but also like these chain yoga studios that sort of started popping up and circa like core power yoga, hot 8 yoga, all those places, mom and pop places like me, we couldn't compete. And then all the classes that are at the gym, people can get yoga in with their gym, with their gym membership. So it's sort of a different financial climate in that way. Obviously, Los Angeles is the most saturated market on the planet. We have to, once you have a studio, you have to think about it in business terms. So it's a product for the product that you're selling, which is yoga, right? I don't know if I told you this. I looked into a space in Westwood. The price was amazing. It wasn't a huge studio. Maybe it would fit 15, 20 people, but I really seriously thought about it. And I was excited at first. And then I was like, I don't know. I don't know where like things are going with the world right now. I love teaching yoga online and I can teach to anyone in the world. And I think I don't know, maybe things are going to be a little different. I opened my first studio in 2008 and then my second in 2014. So, 2025 is very much a different world. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's crazy how much things have changed since like 2014. It's just
Think about that.
mind blowing.
Like people would come into yoga classes with their shoes off. No one was wearing masks. Nobody was asking about, all kinds of different questions that come up now and that are very real concerns. Think about
Hmm.
2008.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know like
And
the online.
like our what do we call it? I guess our me. I'm not really. Our budget was better. I mean everyone was doing better. The economy was better. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. And, like so we had, the COVID 2020, the online trainings in terms of anybody wanted to do yoga or like any physical exercise at home, that shot through the roof. So like, people signing up for classes online to do it in their living room or whatever. I mean, that's really convenient to do. Like you don't have to drive anywhere, you don't have to park anywhere. You don't have to worry about lugging your yoga mat, so everything is just right there. It saves you
And
so
not
much time.
everyone wants to do big group classes with a bunch of sweaty people that you don't know if they showered last night or not. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a different, like, and I don't mind it because I've always had a little bit of OCD, but we've gotten to a different level of like cleanliness and stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's also a large demographic of people I feel like never made it to one of my studios that I could reach now. You know what I mean? Like, so many people have said over the years, I'm always trying to get people to studios. Oh, I'd be so embarrassed. Like, da 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 da. You know what I mean? It's like, no, why? But I get it. I used to be embarrassed taking yoga classes. You know what I mean? Like, and I studied dance and gymnastics since I was 2. So it wasn't like the physical stuff. It was just like I felt like people knew stuff, but I didn't know. You know what I mean? So the
Yeah, yeah.
and then
Yeah.
private yoga can get expensive. And also you might not necessarily not everyone wants like private time. So there's all different demographics and people with different and lifestyles. So I love moving towards the computer and I really want it to blow up. My first training I did last year was so interesting because like, usually I'm usually able to I've run about I don't know, maybe 35 or 40 teacher trainings. I usually can grab people's body and adjust them. So through the computer, but I found these new ways. It was like, okay, so move your butt away from the couch. I mean, away from the couch, your heart towards your cat. Good. Now breathe. So and also the more that we're moving on with things like this, touching isn't always the most appropriate thing to do, especially the first to fifth time someone comes to your class. Building that vocabulary, those cues, without having to touch somebody is very important, I think,
Yeah,
and they can still receive the benefits.
totally. Yeah, you're right. Everyone's
Verbal
got
cues
different
is what I meant to say.
different preferences. Totally.
Yeah, did I
Um,
tell you about the Orthodox Jewish guy that came to my class in West Hollywood? So I know Orthodox Jews, you're not allowed to touch other women. Other women aren't, men and women aren't allowed to touch unless they're married. But if a man's wearing a yarmulke, you don't necessarily know he's Orthodox. So and I tell people that I train, don't touch people. Like the first to 3 classes, let them just come and get comfortable. Like maybe tap them on the back. Hey, how you doing? Acknowledge they're here. If their neck is way up and downward dog, maybe just tap their neck with your fingers, relax your neck down. This guy was like, I'm Orthodox Jewish. And I just did one of those, like, hey, how you doing? It was like his first time there. Big
yeah.
ups to Ari. I love that guy. And he's like, I'm so sorry, but I'm Orthodox Jewish and you can't touch me. So there are other times that you won't expect that you'll need to just use verbal cues. And he was brand new. So he
Right.
taught me a lot. It'd be like, Ari, right foot for other right foot. But it's
That's
important.
yeah, 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 that's true. Yeah,
And other
yeah,
people maybe just don't want to be touched.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Orthodox
Yeah,
Jewish,
I
but
do remember yoga instructors like having to like, adjust my hip or whatever to help me get into the position right appropriately or whatever. Um, yeah. So, and I remember
they should
appreciating that
usually be
because
to
I had
either
no
fix you.
clue.
They should usually be to either fix you if you look like you're hurting yourself, or just what you said to like help you feel what the pose is being meant to do. Like I'm just thinking of pulling someone's hips back from downward dog because usually people don't realize that pose starts from the fingertips and you want to lengthen the spine. But there's a lot of that as well. So I studied Ashtanga first. Ashtanga is known for very aggressive adjustments. People get hurt. And then guess what? They don't go to yoga again. And then there's a whole other group of geniuses that have just busted out of hot yoga, don't know anything, and then they're just grabbing people's bodies and hurting them, right? So there was a lot of that going on as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many people took my teacher training, spent $2,800 or whatever, crazy amount of money at Hot 8 or what's the other one, Core Power, and then spent another 2,500 to take mine to actually learn how to be a yoga teacher, which is kind of
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, it is sad. Yeah. Um, so okay, so what have you noticed since you've been doing yoga for so many years, like over 15 years now,
Almost
in
19.
yourself?
Since
Yeah.
2000, I did my first yoga teacher training in 2006, which means I started doing yoga practicing in 2004. So yeah, 19 years.
Wow, time just flies so fast,
It's
like
crazy.
19th, Um, so
Well,
during
at
your
least
19th.
yoga keeps us looking young.
Yeah, you look fabulous. You
Yeah,
look amazing. Like seriously, if you ever meet her in person, she's really gorgeous. Like I don't know why she's not modeling. She's got a supermodel look, supermodel body. So that's another thing too. Like you're a yoga instructor that actually it shows that you actually do yoga regularly. Like you're committed to your practice. Like your physique, it's very, very obvious you do yoga regularly.
no blushing.
Well, I mean, there's some people out there that, it doesn't show, they say it
Well, I think it's
doesn't.
what is also they're just so. I mean, we could literally talk for days about the benefits of yoga because there's many and everlasting, like the circulation aspect,
Hmm.
right? Just the blood circulation. I came up with this analogy. I probably stole it from somebody, but that's what you do as a yoga teacher. You find something that works, and you can feel what it means, and that's one of the most effective ways I think to teach. But doing like a 45 minutes even or an hour yoga practice, it's like you're massaging your body with your breath. You're sending air down lower than it ever gets to go, massaging the internal organs, letting things keep going. You know what I mean? Like people tell me often I have a yoga glow, and I'm like, thank you. But I think there is something to that, you know? And there's also a purity, you kind of cleanse. We call it burning samskaras. So samskaras is a Sanskrit word, and samskaras is anything that you repeat that doesn't make you feel good. So a perfect example is smoking cigarettes. If someone's like, "Oh, I gotta quit," it's a samskara, right? If there's something that you're doing that doesn't make you feel good, or let's take a woman who's promiscuous, like I gotta stop like having one night stands because she's feeling bad about it the next day. So that's a samskara. It's a habit that doesn't make you feel good, right? It puts a bit of I don't want to use the word shame, but it puts a bit of it's not in alignment with the best you of you, right? Um, but they say when you are feeling burning in a yoga pose, especially around the belly, that's why I called Agni Agni. That's where samskaras are. You're burning away samskaras, right? So you're breathing in deep, you're breathing out long. Oh, shaking is when you're burning samskaras, but also when you're doing deep core exercises.
Nah, okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like being stuck in a loop.
And even
Like
if
a
you don't want to be a yoga teacher, taking a yoga teacher training brings you to a different level of practice for yourself. Most people
hmm
end up wanting to teach after, but a lot of people come just to learn more about what they're doing for their specific bodies, right? Because it's never
hmm
about fitting the person into the pose, it's about making the pose work for that person's anatomy. And we're all different.
Yeah. That's a really good point too, like taking
By the way,
teacher
being
training.
shorter is more helpful in yoga.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I do remember when I mean, even to stay, it's not a regular, like sometimes it's really difficult to get into those poses. And whether that's because of just muscle strength or just actually getting into like you said, adjust people, yoga instructors tend to adjust people's bodies to get into the right alignment. And breathing is so important. Some yoga
Yoga,
instructor.
yoga without the breath. It's just calisthenics or aerobics, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So yeah,
that's a
very
really,
important.
really good point. And like, have you noticed, your intuition increasing as a result of doing yoga, after all these years? Being more insightful, any like,
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of a unique case, even for people that I know. I don't know a lot of people that have done as much as I've done, like Brian Cast. I didn't know if you were mentioning him earlier. Is that the guy you took a class from in LA? He's very funny.
Brian Cast?
Well, he's
No, no,
a Mile
no.
Warrior too.
Oh no, that class was like in like the Toronto area. Have I taken a yoga class in LA? I don't think I have. I'm not sure, but no, I was
Come to
not
the
from the.
park. Come to the park on Saturdays.
Um,
Um, so your original question, your last question was, what was it?
like some of the gifts that you've received as a result of doing yoga for, during your 19 years, like whether that's increased intuition, being more calm and centered, being more insightful.
There's so much knowledge that you get just about yourself that you're able to apply to other people. I really do believe that yoga gives you superpowers. You get in touch with and you feel and you understand things that are only with and for you. It's a relationship, and the most important relationship I think any of us should be concerned with, the priority, is the one that we have with ourselves, with our heart. And yoga is a place for me that I was able to find out like kind of who I really was, if that makes sense. So yoga, I always say this, is not upward dog, downward dog. It's not the poses. It's not something you do for an hour a day, but it's something that starts to kind of take over, if that makes sense. It's more, I don't, it sounds cheesy to say a lifestyle, but it is because it's stuff that there aren't even really words for it. For example, getting into Sanskrit mantras, like maybe 8 or 9 years into teaching, I had legit, and I will say this because spiritual is a powerful word for me. A spiritual experience. I was learning this mantra that I had taken in an advanced training, but it was just hard. I'll say it for you, and you can hear why. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sukandim Pushti Vardhanam Urva Rukamiva Bandhanam Mirtor Mukshya Mamritat. It's a lot of hard work, right? It's like dun dun dun. But I was committed to learn it because I loved the sound and I was just drawn to it. And I found something on YouTube and I was just looking at this light like in a window and and I was sober by the way at this point, like a year and a half sober at this point or something. So it definitely wasn't anything but the mantra and these places that you can explore within yourself. But I think that you can't just go directly to them. I think that's what yoga and meditation, Kundalini yoga, I recommend to everyone if you haven't taken it, if you haven't tried it. Not, it's sort of not as mainstream as vinyasa, but there's this power that you start to build and this awareness and this, yeah, and your intuition is sharpened and you feel places in your body. So certain poses will feel, and that gives you a message. Oh, maybe we're holding on to something here. Let's breathe deep through it. And when we're ready, we'll face it or work through it in whatever way we're working through things that might not be on the yoga mat. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, Colk. He wrote The Body Keeps the Score. He is the first man that did PTSD, studies about trauma that were not government funded. And he sustains still that yoga is the best medicine for trauma. It is the most effective way to heal. Because a lot of people, when something happens, especially to their bodies, don't want to be in their bodies. They'll do anything to get out of it. So just even practicing being in one shape for 5 breaths is asking a lot of them at first. But slowly but surely, they find their way back to their bodies and heal. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah, people will
And that's
disassociate.
beautiful. Sorry, what?
Yeah, people will usually disassociate when they're
Mm.
experiencing trauma.
And
Yeah.
usually for years after, if they don't find something, like their body
Hmm.
becomes an unsafe place. So there are lots of ways people escape sex, drugs, all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's a really good point is reconditioning yourself to actually be in your body through the practice of regular yoga, especially when you're someone who sustained
Sustained
trauma.
present moment awareness,
Hmm.
being in
Yeah.
your, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned something else that you'll start to like discover where you're storing, whether it's your trauma or your stress. um you'll be more aware of it because you're listening to when you're doing yoga or even meditation, you're listening because you're quiet, there's stillness. You actually start to like hear your breath, you can hear your heart, feel your heartbeat, like so you are getting more tuned into you more.
So the thinking
So
mind is a wonderful tool, but the
mhm,
tool is not the master. Heart is king. So
mhm.
remember, the entrance into meditation, which is just simply a sustained state with the absence of thought, or as the old yogis call it, the drunken thinking mind. Um, so your entrance into meditation, focus and concentration. I used to not start physical movement in classes until I could hear at least half of the class breathing audibly. All right, guys, we can be here all day. Nobody's going to get their butts tight. Nobody's going to get all the things they want to get done. It is not yoga without the breath. So you want to cultivate that deep inhale, that complete exhale. It's different kind of breathing. You're breathing diaphragmically from your belly. And then the thinking mind, you don't have time. You're so focused on the inhale, the quality of the deep breath coming in through the nostrils. The exhale, Ujjayi Pranayama is something we can maybe do another time if you like. And then feeling you're a partner with your body. So feeling when your body says something. And when we're just going around and working, taking care of our kids and doing the things that we have to do on the computer, our bodies are just kind of like, okay, I'm going to keep going. But when you give them time and space and shapes to target different organs and different muscles in the body, you can feel what's going on. And then you can make better choices on all fronts from there.
Yeah, totally. And that is really where I like want to put a lot of emphasis on too, because it's so, so important. I know in my life, I've realized the importance of it. And then a lot of people, including myself, just due to the way we are conditioned in society to, be, since we're little tots, academic,
Did you
whatever,
say
like we're
little
just
tots?
little tots. Yeah, because we're
That's
going
very
to.
cute. I just haven't heard tots in a while, just making sure.
Well, because we go to preschool at 2, well, some do, and then then there's kindergarten, whatever. So we're trained to be in our thinking mind, to complete tasks, to learn stuff, ABC, and then it goes and evolves after that. So it's just a byproduct of society. So um, I say that to say that a lot of people are disconnected from their intuition or what's going on in their body because our brains are just kind of like hijacked. Monkey mind starts to happen because like, oh, I gotta go to the grocery store. Oh, I have to do that. Da, 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 da. Just as due to just the way life
We've
is, right?
become very visual.
And so we get disassociated from our intuition, and it's really easy to, what should we do? And also the images that are being painted in society of what we should look like and talk like due to the archetypes that are presented in front of us. And we do this all unconsciously. We're not even really aware of it. We're just doing it to, be a functioning member of society. So when we disconnect like that, we're not aware of it. We're just totally in our thinking mind, thinking mind. Yet our actual intuitive
Drunken monkey
body,
mind. That's what it is. Drunken monkey mind.
yeah, and it's like total disconnect. And this is where we create so many internal conflicts.
Talking
Um,
now about an even bigger thing, which is internal dialogue. And it's been proven that most people's inner voice is negative, redundant, um, and not productive. We mostly, our internal dialogue, I would call it an epidemic at this point. And yoga helps a lot with that, is just talking nasty things to ourselves.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Just
replaying things that other people said or thought about us, or we thought they thought.
yeah, sucking our energy, sucking our time, playing movies in our minds or, of things that are not important that we get sucked into emotionally triggers. But when you do adopt a practice like yoga, meditation, it's a discipline that cultivates an inner knowing and appreciates the calmness and stillness of calm energy as well. And there's a huge power in that
There's so
when,
much power in calm and quiet. People like it's very underrated.
oh yeah,
It's all the
totally.
subtle things that you can feel. That then that's really intuition, you know? And the more you
Hmm.
and the more you feel, the more you hear and more you feel.
Yeah, yeah. And the more you can remain in calm energy too, because that's where when you're in calm energies, when you make your best choices and your energy is not stolen from you, and you can put that energy towards your life, what you want to create, what you want to feel. Because now I'm a mom, so now I'm like even more like aware of like how my energy is affecting my child, right? He's a baby. He's like 11 months old now. So it's like I'm learning even more through him. Like, before I've always been a personal development spiritual junkie and like, reading the books and going to seminars and being a self-aware, blah, 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 blah. But with the baby, it's like now it's like I'm like my awareness levels are increasing even more because I have this little human that, that I'm basically raising and,
Not
want
basically, you creted him and you're yes, everything. It's incredible.
everything. Yeah. So it's like I want him to, he's a very happy baby. So making sure his anchor, his emotional anchor is happiness. um, Resiliency. So everyone's like, oh, you can't protect him, Rita, from bad things. I'm like, I get that. But if he develops a strong anchor, emotional anchor to happiness, he's going to be more resilient when he becomes an adult because that's his anchor. So whenever somebody tries to get him off, um, anger, whenever someone tries to trigger him to become angry or whatever, he's going to quickly snap back into a happy emotional state because that's his strong anchor. So that just to give you an example of why, doing yoga is so important. And I'm instilling this into my son so that he's going to have that naturally growing up and as an adult. He's going to have that strong anchor. He's already a natural yogi too. Like he's like naturally going
He's
into
very
like downward.
strong. He was very
Yeah, he's
strong a week after he was born. Those hands.
yeah. Yeah, Ashley was one of the first few people to see him after she
Pick up
picked him
from
up
the
at the
hospital.
hospital. She saw him at like just like 4 days old. Yeah,
It was a
so
beautiful day.
yeah,
You got to get
and
him started early.
yeah, well, I'm telling you, girl, he's already doing the yoga poses like he's like a little ninja. He's got a lot of energy. And so before he goes to bed, he's like whipping around. He's always moving around. I swear to God, he flew into like a kind of like a chair pose. I don't know a tree pose. Like he
Like he
had
put
one.
like one foot on the inside of the other leg.
One foot, yeah. And he on the against the pillow and he lay and he was sitting up and he fell asleep like that. I was like, what did I just witness? And I can't even take a video of it because you're going to sleep. And then if I turn the video on, the light will go on, and he'll wake up. He does that a lot and he goes into downward dog. He does these just naturally. I think maybe he might have been like a yogi in a previous lifetime. I don't know. It's funny.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, so I think we touched on a lot of great stuff here. Uh, so if somebody wants to, just being cognizant of time, yeah, if somebody wants to, work with you, like whether they want to do yoga with you, just one-on-one or at a park in LA if they live in LA, or they
Yeah,
want
I
to become
also
a,
do privates like in my building, but I'm just a bit like discretionary about, letting people know where I live. I go to people's places. You can just call me. I have a business phone, 310-999-3610. I also just redid my Patreon, so I'm getting a bunch of yoga content on there, and that's patreon.com/Ashley Cummings. And then I'm on Instagram at Venice Canals Yoga, and then youtube.com/Ashley Cummings Yoga.
Awesome. So all that will be listed in the show notes, guys. Her contact information to work with her. She's an amazing yoga instructor. She's an amazing person. And what else was I going to say? I think that's it. You know, when it
Maybe we'll
contacts
go
you.
live in Mar Vista Yoga Park or something. Let them see what it.
Yeah, and also you've trained celebrities yoga as well. So, I mean, you should really call yourself a celebrity yoga instructor because you have
You
trained.
know, I never would, but
Yeah, I know. You're very humble. But she's trained, you know, I know one that you train the Fosters, you train the Foster sisters. That's one
and
that I
David
know.
Foster.
And David
Foster,
Foster.
I trade Aaron and then David, Yolanda, Sarah.
Yeah. So she really is, if you're even if you're not in LA, if you like live in Germany, you know, you can still work with Ashley online.
I
She
just
can,
finished with a girl. She graduated last year, and she's in Israel now, and she's doing amazing. She's teaching like 3 or 4 classes a week. She's like, Ashley, I'm almost close to like making enough money to make enough money as a yoga teacher. I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome. Love it.
I love
All
you.
right. I love you too. And so, all right, so that's it for now, guys. And till the next episode. So thank you so much, Ashley, for being a guest in the Happy
Thank you
Being
for having
Well
me, Rita.
podcast.
Being well, continue doing awesome.
Thank you. All right. All right, guys, live happy being well and subscribe to the Happy Being Well podcast if you haven't. All right. Till next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.
If you learned something new or were inspired to live happy being well, please be sure to subscribe to the Happy Being Well podcast so you don't miss an upcoming episode. Also, please feel free to leave a 5-star review, including what you learned or what inspired you in today's episode. This podcast is presented by happybeingwell.com, your online store for natural wellness products, so you can live happy being well. Order your next all-natural essential oil, all-natural face mask, all-natural bath soap, all-natural deodorant, herbal tea, crystals including crystal home decor and kitchen items, irresistible leggings, and much more at happybeingwell.com. Free shipping on all orders within the USA.